you need to think about three things. And if you do this, if you learn nothing else from today, if you do this alone, you're going to win more. You're going to put up more wins. And that is, when I present an insight or my point of view, and your point of view is your position on something backed by evidence, okay? That's a point of view. And I also believe that everybody on this call and anybody who's listening to this, when you do research on something, should have a point of view. Like, and sometimes the point of view is, if it's generative research, might take some time to formulate, but at the end of the day, you should be working toward a point of view. But when you're presenting something, there's only three things business stakeholders need to know. They need to know, what is it you're trying to tell me? Why does this matter? And what should I do next? If you remember those three keys when you're communicating something, you're going to be exponentially ahead of everybody else. And so what we've communicated as researchers in our decks is often what we're telling you. We're not telling you why it matters or necessarily our point of view, which is what to do next. And if you leave out one of those components, what ends up happening is you have stakeholders having to do more work to try to figure that out. And when you give people more work, their default is going to be, I'm not going to do the work. And so, so I think that's probably the key to that, is just being more explicit about those things. Strategic storytelling on one level comes from strategic communication, which is like using top line reports, being deliberate about the way you deliver information, how you deliver, who you deliver it to. And the second is being deliberate about how you tell stories. And Carrie put it in chat. There's something I call a poster, which is a really good strategic storytelling framework. It starts with problem. What is the problem you're trying to solve? Outcome. What's the future state? The solution is the bridge. Tactics are how you get there. Evidence is the evidence that supports that position, and the risks of action and inaction. You can do that. I did it in a webinar. I did a poster in 60 seconds. So I presented a business case to the webinar in 60 seconds. You can do, if you present things verbally, or if you're doing a portfolio that way. The point I would make, though, is that you have to think about communication, not in terms of like the traditional deck, which is broken. It's like everybody's decks read the same way. Title slide, then there's probably like the objectives and research questions, then there's a methodology section, then there's probably some kind of sampling framing criteria, and then by slide 6 or 7, you're probably getting to like what you would call recommendations. You've buried the lead. Slide 1 should be your point of view. What is this about? Being deliberate about that is how you can become a better storyteller. And then the final thing I'll tell you is 3 things. What are you trying to tell me? Why does it matter to me? And what do you want me to do next? If you just do that alone, you are going to win 95% of the time. Argument. Aristotle said there are 3 things. You need to have credibility, you need to have emotional appeal, and you need to have rational or logic. And you need to be able to connect those things. So what we do is we back things with evidence. We put customer quotes in, and then we allow provenance. We also use that, Marvin, for this also, where we'll link to the actual customer quote so people can actually see that in the customer's words if they choose it. But we put the quote there so they don't have to do that. It's that choose your own adventure flow that matters. And what this has done, which also answers another question, but I want to come back to later, is we always feel like researchers, qualitative researchers, kind of get the short end of the stick because, well, qual is the softer science. And what I'm suggesting here is we need to stop thinking like that. That's bullshit, okay? That is a fundamental problem with research. If we are experts in research, it doesn't matter. Qual is a way that we collect evidence. It's not like my teams. So when I took over the teams 2 years ago, we were still having those conversations with teams about like, I'm going to give everybody another example here that we've all heard. If you ever get an argument from a stakeholder that says to you, this is a qualitative method, your sample size is too small, those are confirmation bias arguments, okay? What you're telling them goes against an existing belief, so they're looking for a reason to disprove it. Nobody ever disproves your research if they believe it, okay? So understand right now that those kinds of confirmation bias arguments exist and shouldn't exist. Since we've picked up this new method, we don't get arguments like that anymore because we focus our arguments on the future. So there are three types of arguments. I teach this in my course also. There are arguments of the past, there are arguments of the present, and there are arguments of decisions, which are the future. I'm going to give everybody an example and they'll like this. Ari, why did you leave the toilet seat up? There is no answer I can give that is going to be satisfactory for that. Why? It doesn't matter why I did it. So like, then the second one is, that's an argument of blame, by the way. Like, here's an argument of value. Ari, what kind of husband leaves the toilet seat up in the middle of the night? Like now I'm attacking myself as thoughtless. It's a value of being thoughtless. Can't win that one. Ready? Ari, what kind of person, I mean, not what kind of person, Ari, what can we do moving forward to get you to put the toilet seat down? How can we remind you going forward? Now I'm going to flip this to research. Why do we only have 6 interviews? What kind of research only uses qualitative methods? Okay, given that we have 6 qualitative interviews, what do we need to do to move forward? Do you see the difference in the way the conversations go? That is what matters. And that when you do that, you start building your credibility and framing yourself as the expert so that the business stops looking at you as a service provider, but starts looking at you as a consigliere or advisor to the business who just happens to use the research methods to help answer business problems, which is how do we connect people to better information faster? That's our job.